The WNBA is scrambling to contain the fallout after Sophie Cunningham didn't hold back. She's rattling the league from top to bottom. Her explosive remarks have unleashed a tidal wave of anger, heated debates, and now a jaw-dropping fine clearly designed to shut her up. Was this a fearless stand for justice, or a crossing-the-line moment in the league's eyes? Fans are split, players are whispering in locker rooms, and the tension is spreading like wildfire. One thing's undeniable: this isn't just about basketball anymore. This is the high-voltage story behind the fine that has everyone talking. This year, Sophie Cunningham has been thrust into the center of one of the most intense player versus league showdowns the WNBA has ever seen. 4 fines. 4. That's not just a slap on the wrist. That's a direct message from the league to a rising star they clearly see as a problem. It all began when Sophie, disgusted with a game marred by shady officiating, posted a blunt TikTok calling the referees useless. That single 30-second clip cost her $500, leaving fans and players stunned at the speed and severity of the punishment. But Sophie didn't fold. She doubled down. On her podcast, she not only stood by her words, she widened the lens, exposing the deep, league-wide frustration players feel over incompetent and biased officiating. That bold move earned her another hit, this time $1,500. Her fine total now sits at a staggering $2,000, a figure that screams the WNBA wants her quiet. Instead, it's done the opposite. It's set off a firestorm that has the basketball world buzzing. The backlash came instantly. Social media exploded with hashtags rallying behind Sophie. Fans pointed out the glaring hypocrisy in the league's approach. In mere hours, GoFundMe campaigns covered her fines entirely. Petitions demanding referee accountability and transparency pulled in thousands of signatures almost overnight. The outrage was sharp and united. Why punish a player for speaking the truth about something everyone can see? Why ignore the broken officiating system while hammering someone who calls it out? But here's the truth. This isn't just a fines and frustration story. It's a tipping point for the league. The standoff between players and referees, the questions about fairness, the demand for transparency, it's all boiling over. As support for Sophie grows, the WNBA is staring down a challenge that could redefine its future. The fallout from Sophie's stand is only in its opening chapter. Now the question is, will this courage light a path to reform or unleash a backlash the league can't contain? The gap between how the WNBA and other major leagues handle criticism is glaring. In the NBA, outspoken players like Draymond Green or icons like Charles Barkley have made careers from telling it like it is. Barkley built his brand on calling out flaws with no filter, and fans loved him for it. It's part of the NBA's culture. Candor isn't just tolerated, it's celebrated. But Sophie's experience in the WNBA tells a very different tale. After daring to call out referees for failing to protect players, Caitlin Clark included, the hammer dropped. She went from venting her frustration to being pulled aside by a league official and warned, "They're going to fine you again." That's not feedback, that's a threat. The message is clear: speak your mind and you'll pay for it. The NBA might encourage open debate, but the WNBA's playbook leans towards silencing dissent. And that raises an uncomfortable question. What kind of culture does this league want to build? Ironically, the WNBA's attempt to muzzle Sophie has done the exact opposite. It's amplified her voice. Her criticism is now front-page news. It's the Streisand effect in full force. Try to bury the story, and you just make it bigger. And the irony cuts deeper when you remember the recent string of unpunished cheap shots on Caitlin Clark. Fans have started connecting the dots. The league seems more eager to fine players for words than for dangerous plays. What message does that send about priorities? About fairness? Pays backers. Putting her hands on Sophie to shove her up. You see Sophie's hand in the air. Both hands are in the air right here. And pays backers is shoving. She is shoving her clean off. Boom. Pushed her right into Howard. Pushed her into Howard. Now she's wide open. And waiting for a pass like she just didn't do anything. And then all of a sudden you get the whistle. And look at the ref. You see the ref? You see the ref right here. Calling the foul, and guess who the foul was on? Sophie Cunningham. Sophie wasn't cryptic. She was blunt. And she was right. Refereeing is hard, sure, mistakes happen. But when you miss obvious calls multiple times right in front of you, what are you even doing out there? That question hangs heavy, not just over one game but over the entire league. And when the NBA's officiating looks like a masterclass compared to the WNBA's chaos, it just makes the league's shortcomings even harder to hide. Fans and players are left asking the same thing. How long can a league survive when the loudest voices for fairness are met with fines instead of fixes? Anyone who's left a WNBA game feeling like something was off knows exactly what Sophie's talking about. This isn't about one bad night. It's about a pattern of inconsistency that's become impossible to ignore. That pattern shapes how teams play, fuels fan frustration, and leaves players openly venting after games. And the league's go-to move? Hit the whistleblowers with fines. Sure, $500 might seem small, but it's not the amount. It's the message. And that message has only made Sophie's fight bigger. Her podcast dissecting the fines threw the spotlight right back onto the officiating mess, making the debate even more public and impossible to sweep aside. The real question now is, how long can the WNBA keep sidelining the people calling for change before the cracks turn into a collapse? Sophie's courage has done more than expose a bad ref crew. It's exposed a league grappling with its own credibility. And if silencing her is just the start, how far will the WNBA go to protect its image before its own foundation starts crumbling? When you look at how other leagues handle referee scandals, the difference is night and day. In the NBA, there's transparency, replay centers, public reports, open debates. Players can call out refs without bracing for a fine. That honesty builds trust, even when mistakes happen. The WNBA? They've chosen a different path. One where critics are punished instead of problems being solved. Slapping Sophie with $500, then $1,500, has only turned fans against them. Social media petitions, trending hashtags, and non-stop debate prove this isn't a blip. It's a full-on revolt against a league that wants quiet more than it wants fairness. Yeah, I think, it was a physical game, I think there's a double standard in how people get their calls. I think Kelsey Mitchell, number one, is held or chucked on every freaking possession and never gets a call off the ball. I think Aaliyah Boston is the worst officiated and post player in the league. She never gets a call. And there's a double standard there. Certainly. But, again, if it's gonna be physical, when you're gonna allow us to be physical, then allow both teams to be physical. If you're gonna call the holds and you're gonna call the chucks, and you're gonna then call it both ways. So, I think that we've been pretty consistent in what we're asking for. And I didn't feel like it was consistent, especially for those two. I think you could call foul every time down the floor for those two. And here's the danger. Bad officiating doesn't just blow calls, it destroys trust. Fans start doubting the integrity of every game. Players get scared to speak. And once that trust is gone, it's almost impossible to win back. That's the real cost of the WNBA's heavy-handed approach. And unless something changes, it's a cost they'll be paying for a long time. The WNBA is now standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down a choice that could define its entire future. It can either take the brave route, confront its officiating disaster head-on, or keep pretending nothing's wrong, and in the process, alienate the very fans and players who give the league life. The stakes have never been higher. This is more than just a minor PR flare-up. It's a full-blown credibility crisis. Will the league choose to fix its deep-rooted problems, or will it keep punishing the very voices calling for reform? And more importantly, what unseen forces are pushing this heavy-handed crackdown? Whatever happens next won't just be a turning point. It could redefine what the WNBA stands for. Only in the WNBA could you get fined for talking about your own fine. You couldn't script a more bizarre scenario if you tried. Sophie Cunningham shared on her podcast how her general manager pulled her aside in front of her teammates to break the news that the league had slapped her with yet another penalty. She wasn't spewing profanity. She wasn't hurling personal insults. She was simply speaking about the refs and their performance. Sophie even made it clear that some officials are talented and their job is no walk in the park. But that small acknowledgement didn't matter. The WNBA's disciplinary hammer still came crashing down. The bigger issue? None of this would be happening if officiating was consistently fair and competent in the first place. When refs miss obvious calls right in front of them, calls that directly affect player safety, frustration is inevitable. And this isn't just about Sophie. This is about Caitlin Clark being hacked, shoved, and blindsided game after game without protection. This is about the Indiana Fever fighting uphill not just against opponents, but against inconsistent officiating. Instead of treating these criticisms as valuable feedback and working toward improvement, Cathy Engelbert's league doubled down on punishment, turning what should have been a minor incident into a major scandal. And it couldn't come at a worse time, especially with national media like the Wall Street Journal openly questioning whether the WNBA is creating a hostile work environment that silences honest conversation. The hypocrisy is glaring. Dangerous cheap shots, Marina Marbury's blindside hit on Clark, Deidre Carrington's near eye poke, are quietly brushed aside without meaningful consequences. But the moment Sophie Cunningham points out the refs aren't doing their job, suddenly the league finds its backbone and enforces discipline with military precision. It's like ignoring a 5-alarm fire in the living room while scolding someone for spilling coffee on the couch. The priorities here aren't just skewed, they're upside down. And every time the league chooses to police words over protecting its star players, it chips away at the trust fans and athletes have in its leadership. This uneven enforcement has left both players and fans wondering where the WNBA's true priorities lie. Sophie gets hit with a fine for a measured, respectful podcast comment, while Caitlin Clark takes hit after hit on the court with no protection. Over 2 seasons, not a single fine has been issued for those blatant fouls. The disconnect couldn't be more obvious, and it's starting to feel like the league is more interested in controlling the narrative than in protecting the athletes who are driving its growth. Sure, defenders of the WNBA will argue that every league fines players for criticizing officials. But here's the difference. In other leagues, officiating is generally competent enough that players don't have to call it out week after week. In the NBA, for example, you might hear the occasional complaint, but the overall standard of officiating is miles ahead, which means the conversation is about improvement, not basic survival on the court. When another league's refs look flawless by comparison, it's a giant flashing sign that your own system is broken. Fixing that root problem should come before silencing the people pointing it out. And let's be real, Sophie's criticism wasn't some unhinged rant. She didn't drop insults, didn't call anyone names, and didn't question anyone's character. She simply said what thousands of fans and viewers were already thinking. The refs aren't doing a good job. That's it. No dramatics, just truth. Yet, instead of saying, "We hear you, and will work to improve," the WNBA slapped her with fines, effectively sending the message, "We care more about how things look than how they actually are." That's the hallmark of a league stuck in defensive mode instead of growth mode. If anything, this move has backfired spectacularly. By fining Sophie for speaking out, the league has ensured that even more people are listening to what she has to say. Her podcast episodes have seen a spike in listeners eager to hear the dangerous comments that the WNBA wants to suppress. Instead of burying her voice, they've amplified it. And here's the irony. This kind of candid honesty is exactly what could make the league better if they'd embrace it. Athletes should feel free to share their experiences and frustrations, because those conversations lead to solutions. Punishing truth-tellers just hides the problems until they explode. The truth is, when a sport is being run well, players don't need to go public with their complaints. But when officiating is this bad, no amount of fines or intimidation will stop the truth from getting out. Sophie Cunningham's punishment is a symptom of a bigger leadership problem, one that puts protecting the league's image ahead of protecting its players and fixing its flaws. And until that changes, controversies like this will keep coming. So, here's the real question. Can the WNBA finally admit it has a leadership crisis, confront the officiating mess, and start protecting stars like Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham? Or will Cathy Engelbert and the league keep doubling down on silencing its best ambassadors, even if it means burning the trust of fans and players alike?